From Universal Friend, Kevin Nash recently talked again about unionization, and I found it interesting where he flip-flops on the topic. Before, he was gung-ho on wrestlers needing a union and insurance and advocating for a SAG, it was a Screen Actors Guild, to get involved as far as a union goes. Then a few weeks later, he's saying he can see it from both sides, and now there isn't much of a need for a union these days as there was in the 90s. Is he getting fed lines from WWE, and is his best buddy Triple H taking the party line?
It sure seems like a big reversal on that. Maybe it's to the point now where there's wrestlers that dip in and out of that and talk about it from time to time. And it used to be once you brought that up, much like Jesse Ventura talked about when he brought it up, and Hogan stooged him off, according to Vince McMahon on the stand during Discovery, it's over. You're always going to take care of 1 to maybe 5 people in the company. There's definitely going to be one that you're really, really going to take care of, like a Hogan. Now they have a mix of maybe 5 to 6 people they really, really take care of. And if there was a union, much like Ryback said, even pay and stuff, and that's a rabbit hole, and that's kind of like a tough thing to hash out. But usually you get 2 different reactions. You get either, if somebody advocates for it, and then you look around and say, well, there's always going to be these people that are going to counter it, so why should I bother? Let me just get mine. And then there's the people that somebody says, maybe possibly, hey, man, that kind of looks bad, and we're starting to get questions about unionization, and there's other people that might look into this. Could well, not so much. I don't think Triple H says, hey, say this, but Hunter would say, you have to kind of look at it from our point of view. And that's where Kevin Nash might do that. Or he just legitimately changed his mind because Kevin Nash was also somebody that benefited from the independent contractor stuff throughout his career. And now, he might be like, okay, well, if I say that and I'm flip-flop, it's very, very complex. I can't speak for Kevin, especially where I'm at. I can't speak for Kevin.
Oh, well, we're bottom feeders here, but I'm going to give you the quote, and like the last line in this, pay extra close attention to. If when I love when Dutch says, when somebody tells you who they are, believe them. And this is perfect. Here's the quote. I just wish that the WWE guys were getting a bigger percentage of what was being brought in than they are, Nash said. I'd like for it to be an open door to sit down, and it'll just never get there. Because, I made some inroads with SAG. I wanted to get involved with the whole union thing. And insurance and everything. And it was one of those things where, just like, as I started to dive into it, I sent a message to Andrew Yang, who I guess was the president, and he got back to me. But I didn't get back to him because it was just like, what benefit does this do to me? I'm done wrestling. I was like, hang on, so this was a big issue a few weeks ago, and you couldn't even be bothered replying to the guy who was offering to talk to you to help. And like, how selfish can you be? What else you got to do? You're not really acting, you're not wrestling, you barely podcast, you barely wake. Why don't you do something good for people? Or at least attempt to. And that's why I'm now thinking, oh, well, it's funny how it's 50-50 now. You've got to see it from both sides, and now he doesn't want to pursue the whole unionization, or not that it'd ever take, probably, in wrestling, but it's like, I'm reading between the lines here. I don't know about you.
Well, I don't know, but you told me to pay attention to that last line. That's the 2 last lines, and that's kind of saying the quiet part out loud, right? I got mine, so why should I even bother at this point? And you know what? I mean, like I said, I try to take a George Carlin approach to a lot of things in wrestling and just remove the emotion or any kind of stuff like that, or at least have some fun with it. I definitely think this is the biggest elephant in the room for decades upon decades. I say that because if something happens to where they're not independent contractors, let's be real here. Everybody's afraid to say maybe 2 or 3 out of the 19 parameters or check marks are possibly, it's not even a full 2 to 3. They're still kind of wavering like a 70-30 or something that in the way, but everything else is employee. You're told when to show up. You're told when to work. You're told how to dress. You're told exactly how your match is going to go, more so than ever, right? Not just to finish. You're told when to work. You can't take days off. And you definitely can't turn around in that analogy that people use. Like, okay, I painted your house on Monday. Now I'm going to go paint AEW's house on Wednesday. No, you're not an independent contractor. You can't do that. By the way, non-compete clauses or no compete clauses should be illegal. The minute, especially if you're getting fired, that whole night will pay you for 90 days. It's a way to skirt that, keep you quiet, and keep you happy. But the real
And
thing is not
devalued as well.
devalued. That 90 days that you're getting paid, how much money and time and energy and traction as far as you leaving one company or being told to leave and going to another is, it's so much, how should I say? It's just so much gaslighting that's involved with this that, hey, don't worry, you'll make more. Well, just pay me more. How's that? I've always gotten that with the $75,000 a year guarantee. The thing that happens too with WWE and wrestling in general, and I talked about this with the video game royalties, you may be owed 60 or 70,000 for a quarter with say royalties. We're going to give you 30. 30,000 is a lot of money, but it's not what you're owed. But are you going to complain? Because guess what? We'll give you your 70, but hey, house is light, brother. You're only getting 5 for the next 8 quarters because we're going to get that money back. Just like first class plane tickets, the tour bus. You think that the company is just giving you those things? They're getting it back. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but they are. And a union or any kind of group mentality, dude, health insurance alone, just health insurance. I'm by no means one side of the aisle or the other or anything. There's nothing political here except me saying, just take care of the wrestlers. And then when they're done, this is why a union or SAG or anything like that, to have something afterwards for them to be able to live a life. But I've always had the impression with WWE and wrestling in general, and even sometimes fans have this attitude. You're done entertaining us. Can you just go away? Can you just disappear? Can you just die? Can you just get out? You're old news. Anything I say off base with that?
No, we'll be talking about Sheamus in a bit. Kevin Nash in the next quote, I won't go through all of it, but he's saying, well, we needed a union back in the 90s a lot more than they do now because there's Netflix money, ESPN money, $350,000 base salary for main roster. Okay, well, if that was true and you felt the same, I guess, back in the 90s, why didn't you make any stink of it then? It's because you're getting paid too much. It didn't benefit you. And that's why there'll never be a union in wrestling, because the only voices powerful enough to enact change are getting too taken care of to rock the boat. So apparently it wasn't that big of a deal to Kevin Nash or whoever else it might be to start a union. There was an interview with Bailey not too long ago with whoever it was. It wasn't a wrestling interview. It was a regular, journalist, whoever it may be. And they were like shocked when they found out that the company didn't spring for the... I mean, they do for the flights, but the rental cars, they've got to find their own hotels, they've got to find this, that, and the other. It's a lot easier now than it used to be, obviously, with less days. But they were shocked. It's like, what do you mean you're independent contractors, yet you don't get these benefits, yet you have to do all your own logistics for the most part as well. And it's like, outside of wrestling, people are like, what? How does this work?
But it's always going to work that way because you know why? There's always somebody that wants to live out the childhood dream. They always want to go to WWE or they always wanted to be in wrestling. And you know what? We don't discount the fact you just have to know a little bit more from videos like this and other things. And if you still want to go ahead with your dream of becoming a WWE superstar or wrestler in general, go right ahead. I don't regret any of the stuff that I've done. I could have handled things differently. It could have, but they made what we have today and the person I am today. But the thing with Nash, going back to that, I'm kind of like, I'm reading between the lines and there's something missing here, unless the very last line is the exact reason when he says, I sent a message to Andrew Yang. He got back to me. This is the part right here. But I didn't get back to him because it was just like, what benefit does this do to me? What was in between the communication when you started to dive into it? You communicated, reached out to Andrew Yang with, I guess, starting a conversation to see what can we do to get SAG involved is my assumption. Something happened, and then you said, well, wait a minute, hold on a second. What does this do to benefit me? And I'm not going to get back to him. Do you see the hole in that story?
Mm-hmm. It just makes it kind of obvious, doesn't it? I mean, oh, but at least Kevin Nash is completely independent. Oh, wait, no, he's not. He's got a WWE Legends deal, and he's leased the NWO IP to them to sell merchandise.
Which he was mad because they didn't pay him enough in royalties for the NWO, and he wanted to do a financial audit of the company.
Yeah. And probably paid him off. So, well, we'll make it up to you this time. Kind of thing. But yeah.
You know what, dude? It's just a tale as old as time, and I don't think it's ever going to change. I want to, before we move to the next topic, that $350,000 a year guarantee, it is not minuscule by any means. But whenever they switched over to it, inflation, the cost of everything, it's still, you do your own taxes, your 1099, you have to pay in every state, country, some cities like Philadelphia and LA to have entertainment taxes. It's so complicated. It's easier with TurboTax and digitally and all that, but still, factor that in, a $350,000 a year guarantee. It's probably right in line with $75 a year back when I was there. And with the cost of everything and inflation, you're still kind of struggling. And they are doing more and more shows, especially Saudi Arabia, overseas tours, TVs. They're bringing house shows back. How does that work with these downside guarantees? And there is a wrestler, we mentioned him recently, that when he was going to renew his contract, he wanted to look at the merch numbers because he was in the top 3 of sellers, and the person refused to give him the metrics and the numbers because he would have leverage to negotiate a better contract. They're playing like the Amazon affiliate game where we'll tell you how many clicks, but we won't tell you how many conversions.
Just to add on this, Nash on his legacy in wrestling, it wasn't the fact, quote, that we got the deals. This is the deals with WCW, I guess. It was the fact that we went into the WCW locker room and made our deals well known to every top guy in that locker room. That's the difference. People have always gotten paid, but nobody knew what Hogan got. They could always suspect. We went to the guys, and I would just say, dude, how much are you making? And they reply, I'm making 800. I'm making this. You need a raise. We're working in the same matches. Now, I mean, that could be argued, almost it could be argued as well, that the dirt sheets, your observers and PW Torch and stuff like that had a lot to say as far as the wages go, because they would print how much roughly people were making for quite a lot of years. And also, purely just WCW's existence and going against WWF and getting hot kind of forced up the pay structure and changed up the pay structure for the WWF, where they had to do guaranteed minimums. And then you can credit AEW for existing, for just being competition to raise the base minimum for a lot of people, and the fact that Tony is also willing to pay a lot, and that upsets people who don't want to pay them, of course.
Yeah, I love the fact he does that for the talent. He takes care of them, and sometimes they get sent home, but they're still getting paid. And that's the most important part in this business, to make sure you get paid, because your time window is not unlimited. I was going to say this too. The last part, I have actually seen this outside of the TLC match, which the Dudleys, the Hardys, and Edge and Christian have talked about, and separately or together, that they all went in to get paid more for the match. So all the teams advocated for everybody in the match to get paid more. I've seen the other end of it, like Nash is saying, I'm making 800, I'm making this, you need a raise, we're working the same matches. Then the person goes to the office and says, hey, why am I getting paid this? I'm working this guy, he's getting this much and I'm getting this. They're like, who told you that? Well, and now you're stuck in a way, because that person's not there, but maybe you'll say, well, that person told me. They go to that person, they're like, I never said that. He's a lie. You have he with the office over. Now you really are like hoping there's a union right now at that point.